Hey everyone, in this video I wanted to try something a little bit different. I was thinking about how some albums are so amazing but seem to never get the attention they deserve. The first one that comes to my mind is J. Cole's For Your Eyes Only. Released December 9, 2016, 363,000 copies in traditional albums were sold within its first week of release, and it eventually went platinum April 7th of 2017. Even with this though, when I talk to people, either those who are fans of J. Cole or those who just know his most popular songs, For Your Eyes Only seems to get swept under the rug. So, because of this, I want to take a look at why I think For Your Eyes Only is such a great album, and maybe the best album released from Jermaine. The first thing you need to know going into For Your Eyes Only is that the lyrics are extremely important. Cole is no stranger to the idea that words can hold power to paint the world. In Let Nas Down, a song from his album Born Sinner, released in June 18th of 2013, Cole says, "I used to print out Nas raps and tape them up on my wall. It was pictures I saw, and since I wanted to draw, I used to read them in awe." Anyone who's a fan of J. Cole knows that one of his biggest strengths is his ability to paint a picture with its words. As he said in his song Apparently from 2014 Forest Hills Drive, "This is my canvas, I'ma paint it how I want it, baby." There isn't a single song in his album that doesn't have something to say. I would recommend if you want to take a serious listen to this album, pull up the lyrics on Genius and follow along. Also listen to the whole album in one sitting or as few sittings as you can in order to get the whole story. Make sure to listen in order too. You could skip around, but the album already has a nice flow the way it is. The album tells the story of a black man named James McMillan Jr. that grows up in a neighborhood full of drugs and violence. Eventually, James meets a girl, he falls in love, gets her pregnant, and realizes that he has something he can lose and for the first time is scared to die. James gets closer to God and loves his family, but is plagued by his condition from his past. James says he can't visualize himself as nothing but a criminal and is scared that he is going to die soon. He goes to Jermaine with an album, just in case he dies, and tells him to play it for his daughter when she's ready so she can understand why he was the way he was and so he can give her advice. James is a product of the cycle of poverty and violence in the hood, and he knows it. The first song on the album, For Whom the Bell Tolls, does a great job of setting the tone for the whole album. The audio sounds grainy and takes a second to start, making it sound like a start of a vinyl playing. At the end, the album ends with sounds of a vinyl being turned off. It's a small detail that adds a lot to the atmosphere of the album and helps the story. For Whom the Bell Tolls is short, sweet, and leaves the listener wanting more. The lyrics set up the scene for the mind of James McMillan Jr. He's a tortured mind that's contemplating suicide because he feels like he has no one and nowhere to turn. The second song, Immortal, sets up the neighborhood and environment James grew up in. And since Cole was close friends, it's probably the same place Cole grew up. A lot of the songs on this album can be viewed as either Cole or James, and it's not clear which songs are James or Cole speaking, but other times it's not hard to tell. I personally think that for this song, it doesn't matter whose perspective it's from. Whoever is singing is painting their home, crack addicts and gangbangers and all. In this song, Cole also paints the mindset that is created by this environment. People from his hood are full of pride and aren't willing to give up that for anyone or anything. Life seems hopeless and it seems like the only way to make it is to sell dope or die young and be immortal. Deja Vu seems to me to be from James' perspective as he goes to a club and he sees a girl that he's into. He slides up all smooth and gets her number, but then says, "I know you were made for me, but darling, don't you wait for me, 'cause I can see the promised land, but I can do no promising." Even though he thinks that she's bad as fuck, he feels his death coming and can't promise her to always be there for her. In Vil Mentality, James admits that his mind state is what's hurting him and leading him to his death. He starts off the song with, "How long can I survive with this mentality?" and later says, "You call it running, I call it escaping," which shows that James wants to change for the better and is starting to think past his villain mentality. In the middle and end of the song, Cole includes a schoolgirl from his hometown of Fayetteville, North Carolina, who has a story similar to James. Cole uses this to show that the story told in the album is not a crazy or special one. It's a story faced every day by countless people, and everyone suffers, even children. I'm going to go ahead and just talk about She's Mine parts 1 and 2 at the same time. They're both pretty similar, but they each have a different message. In part 1, James is talking about how he is so in love with this girl that he feels like he finally has something to lose. He talks about how she tears down the walls he built up and gets rid of his demons. Part 2 is after the birth of his child. You can tell them apart because the second part starts with the baby crying behind the same backtrack of part 1. Cole starts off by talking about how the black community during Christmas time struggles to buy the things that are supposed to be more affordable with the Black Friday discounts. Cole has talked before about how the black community struggles with money because most grew up in a home where they had no money, so they never learned how to save. Then Cole goes back on track and talks about his child and how he's not even sure if he's worthy to have a child. James cements that his walls are being broken from part 1 when he says, I want to cry and I'm even trying to fight it, don't want to die, cause now you're here and I just want to be right by your side. On any night that you be crying, baby, I dry your eyes. Then he goes on to say that there is a God, showing that he's finally found his faith. Change seems to be from the perspective of J. Cole as he talks about how he reached success by looking out for himself and not letting anyone take advantage of him. Throughout the song, the theme of change is heavy with lines like, life is all about the evolution. Cole starts by saying that change is something that has to happen on an individual level before it can happen on a large level. The only real change comes from the inside. Cole is saying that even he had to do shit he wasn't proud of. Neighbors feels kind of out of place in this album just because it doesn't fit in as well as all the other songs, but it's still a great song. It talks about his personal experience with neighbors that assume just because he's black and has money, he sells drugs. His home was really invaded by a SWAT team, and footage of that was caught from a security system. He recounts the experience in the song while realizing that he's not totally blameless. He realizes that when people get the money, they immediately move to the white neighborhoods and leave their homes when they should be fixing their hood rather than leaving it. Folding Clothes is probably my least favorite song off this album. It's just not really my style, but it still adds to the story. This is from James' perspective and is about how he wants to help his girl who's now pregnant with his child. At the end, he talks about how people from the hood are the best actors because they can't show emotion or come off as soft, but his girl is giving him comfort that everything is going to be alright. There isn't too much going on in this song, but it's still nice to get a little more about James. For Your Eyes Only is the longest song on the album, but it's also the best one in my opinion. Clocking in at 8 minutes and 50 seconds, this one takes a lot longer to listen to, but every time I listen to it, I feel like it's too short and I never want it to end. The mellow beat, the powerful lyrics, all of it comes together to make a masterpiece. It starts off from the perspective of James as he talks about how his childhood put him in the mind of a criminal who was never able to beat it. He tried to find a good job, but because no one would hire him as a felon, he had no choice but to continue doing shit he didn't want to do. He goes on to talk about how as a child his dad was killed too, so he tells his child he knows how she feels. He just hopes that she doesn't also get stuck in the same cycle as him and never makes it out the hood. He says that he once had dreams, but after his father was killed and his mother was addicted to drugs, he was raised by his grandma in a dangerous neighborhood and ended up selling drugs just like his father. He talks about how the system creates this cycle of poverty, addiction, and criminals. The last part of the song is from J. Cole's perspective as he talks about when James came up to him with the record and told him to play it for his child when he dies and says that it should be heard by everyone so they can see how a crooked system sends people to prison when they need education. The story of the album is powerful, and I have yet to hear an album tell such a cohesive story that also takes a look at the system that keeps poor communities poor. The whole album has a really chill vibe that I like to listen to whenever I want to chill out or just get lost in thought. The lyrics remind me of my childhood and the neighborhood I grew up in, and it gets me thinking about the issues with poverty. I love this album because it sounds fucking amazing, but also makes me think critically about the world we live in. Let me know what you thought of the album if you've heard it, and thanks for watching. Please subscribe, support my social media and Patreon, links in the description. I have music coming soon, I promise. Just be patient. Thank you for watching.